Abortion is often considered the secret sin within the Christian community. Today, my guests will share their personal stories of abortion, healing, and their passion for ministering to others. And they'll share how the church can free people from the bonds of abortion. I met with Denise and Brian Walker. Together, they're reaching out to post-abortive men and women through Everlasting Light Ministries. Their passion for abortion awareness in the Black community comes from their own personal experience with choosing abortion. Denise, how has your abortion affected you?
I think the question is, how hasn't it affected me? It's affected every aspect of my life. Suicide, the depression that goes along. I couldn't understand why one day I was up and the next day I was down. I could never seem to be on an even keel. Inwardly, that sense of turmoil inside that takes you up and down and up and down and up and down. And circumstances were always determining how I was feeling. And then the deep, dark depression that I would go into, and I couldn't seem to get out of it. Or I can't go into a department store where there's a baby section. I could never go to the baby section of a department store. If it weren't for my mother-in-law buying clothes for my kids, I don't know how they would have gotten them. Okay, or the promiscuity. Okay, I was so promiscuous in college before, but most importantly, after the first 2 abortions. I had been to bed with 49 guys, trying to forget, trying to wash away the pain, cover it up, and that's what I did. And for all those years, I just kept pushing that anger, pushing that pain down. And slowly and surely, I just began to die inside. But you cover it up, you mask it up, you get busy, you get good at school, you get good grades. And then I met Brian. And after meeting him, I was just madly in love with this guy. And we were planning an African wedding, and we were living together. And you would have thought that after the first 2 abortions that it would have clicked in that, you know what, maybe your lifestyle has something to do with this. But it didn't.
I did what I thought would get me out of it, would take away the responsibility, the fear, the responsibility. I went through that period of the 60s and the free love and the Black Power movement and all that stuff. And there were some positive things in that, but also there were some things that were very negative. It was like maybe Black Power Monday, Friday, but Saturday comes as party time. And that's what I used to do. I would go to parties a lot. Not necessarily sleep around a whole lot, but I had my fill, I had my share of that. And it just deadens you, I think, over time. It deadened me to the things that really mattered. It deadened me to, being a real man.
Did you see the abortion decision as a civil rights issue in any way?
No, it was expedient. It was very, very selfish. I couldn't even spread that around to any of the leaders of that time. You didn't hear them talk about it, abortion as a civil right, except with some of the feminist circles. But you didn't hear Black leaders talking about, we need to keep our children, we need to keep our race. And I knew some women that had children out of wedlock. And for most part, they were without a partner or a husband or a boyfriend. And in my pride, I said, I'd never do that. But when faced with that situation, I walked.
Every problem that Brian and I would come up against, whether it was financial or emotional or whatever, it always took me back to the abortion. It always took me back to how he left me at the clinic, how he left me there, how he essentially turned on me. And I blamed him for everything. I didn't take responsibility for my own acts. I knew it was wrong, but it affected my anger levels kept raising and raising and raising. Every time something went wrong, it wasn't what went wrong, it was the abortion. It took me back.
When we return, we'll meet with Zakiya McKinney, who says in her line of work, it's very common for her to meet and counsel post-abortive women. Zakiya is the founder of Junia, a company which is training, inspiring, and empowering women from all walks of life, particularly in the Black community. She is also post-abortive, which enables her to connect with other women who have gone through similar journeys. Are many of these women living with the secret of abortion?
Amazingly so. I have not held a small group yet without at least 1/3 of the women divulging the secret of abortion.
Had they kept it a secret until that time?
The majority of them have. I'd say a good 75 to 80% of them, this is the first time they've spoken of it. The rest of them have told a close friend, but the rest of them are living with that secret and that weight, a great weight. They're afraid of what people will think about them. They themselves have not really thought about it. They've covered it within their own hearts or buried it into a place that has not allowed them to live free.
You called yourself a co-conspirator to murder. Why did you do that? That's pretty rough.
Well, that's the truth. It sounds rough, and usually we think about co-conspirators, you read about it. You kill somebody that's at least above the age of 1. But I took a life, and by going along with the trend or the lie, like I like to say, I, with my wife, allowed her to get up on the table many, many years ago in the South Bronx, and we took a life. We knew it was a life. We knew it was a child. I knew it was a child, but it was convenient. It seemed like the right thing to do. And if that child was older or out of the womb, yeah, I would have been convicted as a co-conspirator. You know, just because I didn't choke the child or put the gun to the head doesn't mean that I'm off the hook.
With your multiple abortions and those likely of friends that you knew, was it readily available to find an abortionist who would do the procedure? Was it any difficulty getting that done?
None at all. At the time I was living, well, with the first 2 abortions I was at school, I was at college, and those abortion clinics were everywhere, quite frankly. They're very easy. And I'd never heard of back then they were called CPCs. I'd never heard of a crisis pregnancy center. I'd never known that they were available. And I wish that I had. And that was part of the anger. If I had known. If I hadn't swallowed the lies, and I swallowed them hook, line, and sinker. You've got to believe the lie that it's a blob of tissue in order to get up on that table.
Well, government numbers show that Black women have a disproportionate number of abortions compared to white women. Mm-hmm. And some say that the abortion industry is targeting the Black community. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it's that was their marketing plan from the beginning. Margaret Sanger was a eugenicist, a racist, and she considered Blacks and as other, especially Eastern Europeans, is to be a burden on society. And so she was the founder of Planned Parenthood. They changed their name along the way because they did not want to be associated with the so-called eugenics movement. They were just trying to cover their tracks as well.
Do you think the church community has a responsibility to educate men about the realities of abortion and its impact on them?
Yes, unequivocally, yes.
How do you think they can do that?
They can speak about the reality of the child in the womb. If we can raise men up to be like Jesus, then they'll have the mind of Christ. And back then I didn't have the mind of Christ. I had Brian's mind, which was in the gutter and totally selfish. And if you have the mind of Christ, then you realize that you are taking a life if you put your wife or your girlfriend up to this.
Like Brian, there are millions of men living with the guilt of experiencing an abortion with their girlfriend, wife, or friend. This is something Pastor John Stevenson understands. And when we return, he'll share his perspective on the church's role in educating and ministering on the issue of abortion. It's estimated there are 85,000 predominantly black churches in America, with more than half of all African Americans regularly attending. So what's the church doing about the issue of abortion? Do you think pastors and congregational leaders are talking about abortion to their congregations?
No, not to the degree that I believe we should. I feel that the church, in many ways, we have stood in the place where we've needed to on a lot of issues, and just in society, and abortion has been one of those issues that we've stayed away from.
Why do you think that is?
Because in many ways we've been told that it's a political issue, it's a social issue, and many have bought into the separation of church and state. It can be viewed as a controversial issue as well. And unfortunately, we as Christian leaders have not led with the courage that I believe we now have the opportunity to lead from, that says we need to address these issues. We need to stand up for what we believe is right.
What do you think the message should be from the church on abortion?
There needs to be a sense of loving and accepting a bad decision that's been made. But then secondly, I believe that we need to begin to inform and to educate our members around life when it starts, the importance of helping those who may be in the position of making the decision of whether to carry that life to full term and give birth to that child, or to abort it, helping them understand that the right choice, the godly choice, is to have that baby, because life comes from God. To educate around the adoption opportunities that are available, so that members that find themselves struggling with life, and usually when people are faced with those kinds of decisions, it's not just about that baby or that birth, it's about life and their sense of, can I really do well in life having this child.
What's your message for the church regarding the way it deals with abortion in the African American community?
It's very real. It's in the pews, and I dare say it's in the pulpit. I know abortion is not a respecter of person, and it affects leaders, families, and children, and that it is really an opportunity to evangelize. It's one of those evangelism fields or mission fields that's not talked about very much.
The ministry that needs to go out to those who are either caught in an unplanned pregnancy or an unwanted pregnancy. The church should be a sanctuary for that person. If we had allowed someone even to come alongside us and walk us through this and show us this is the right way to go. Give also the option for adoption, to change its attitude about adoption, to give them courage to go through with the pregnancy, give them the necessary support, whether it's fiscal, whether it's baby clothes, place to live, whatever it is that they need. And also for there to be a willingness to talk about adoption. And for those who are in these pregnancies, who are walking that out and bringing these children to term, stop treating them like, they're the piranhas. Stop treating them as if they've done something wrong.
And those kind of things that are very practical, very spiritual. But the main thing is to, for those that are in the problem, in the crisis, be a joint of supply.
How do you think the church can go about ministering to women in their congregations who have experienced abortion or are considering choosing abortion as the option?
On one hand, we want to share a message to those that have had abortions that God is merciful, and if you've made that kind of decision in the past and you have not forgiven yourself, you need to do that. If you have forgiven yourself, maybe at some point the Lord may require you to speak about that experience to help someone else. And we've seen those types of individuals come forth and to share their story. Talking to you right now, there's someone in the other room that's had 5 abortions in her life and had never really articulated that till we started talking about it from the platform. And to those women who find themselves pregnant and are struggling with that pregnancy, we want to give them a message of hope and say, hey, before you make that decision that may be to abort that child, let us talk to you. Let us walk you through the options. And then I believe the church has some level of responsibility to provide some type of support.
Coming up next, what do you think the central message is that the person sitting in the pew needs to hear about abortion who may actually be considering it at the time? This week I met with 4 different African American leaders who are making strides to educate and support men, women, and their communities about the impact abortion can have on society. Based on your experience of ministering to women and now counseling them, what would you say abortion is doing to the African American community?
I believe that it is leaving a weight on women who serve as mothers, as sisters, as doctors and lawyers. It's leaving a weight in their life that does not allow them to be free to be who they are and to do all that they could do. I believe it leaves an emotional scar that affects relationships, marriages. I believe it provides sometimes an opportunity for a wedge in between a husband and a wife. I believe it leaves women in the African American community living with a bondage they don't have to live with, and with a secret they don't have to keep. I also know the forgiveness that can set you free from it. And I know the empowering that can come when now you can be the voice that says, make a different decision. Don't make the one that I did.
How do you think women can get the support, education, and resources that they need so that they're not put in a position where they have to choose life or death for their baby?
I think that churches need to be the first line of defense. I think that churches need to be speaking out and speaking up about the sin of abortion and the social convenience of abortion that's wrong. And that churches need to be a line of defense that says, look, our church will embrace you, we'll love you. We're going to give you some tough love, but we'll love you. We'll stand by your side. We'll help you.
Do you think the church has done a good job so far in leading the way?
I think the church has a lot of room to do a much better job, specifically in being a stronger, louder, deliberate voice that says, abortion is not the way to go.
What do you think the central message is that the person sitting in the pew needs to hear about abortion who may actually be considering it at the time? What does the church need to be saying to that person?
The church needs to say to that person that the abortion that you're considering is not the plan of God for your life. It's not the plan of God for your life or for the life of that child. And if you're married and you're in an unwanted pregnancy, you can be married and be in an unwanted pregnancy, to give that couple the support as well.
God has given us this opportunity as it relates to the unborn and what we're seeing happening in this area of abortion. So what I share is we all have a responsibility, one, to help those who have already walked through abortions to be able to walk in a better place for their future. Then secondly, to communicate information to our membership and to our friends and our families that you don't have to do that, and it's not the right thing to do. And so the more we can talk about it and get it out in the open, the better support we can be to one another.
We've seen today how impactful abortion is on the lives of people who have experienced them. And we've also learned how uniquely equipped the church is to help them. I hope today's program will encourage other churches to reach out. Thanks for watching. I'd like to offer you a new resource ideal for the Black community that conveys a pro-life message to youth. It's a children's book called Justice Loves Babies and beautifully illustrates the value of unborn life. It's yours free for the asking while supplies last. Just visit our website at facinglife.tv to request your copy. While there, order your own personal copy of today's program on DVD.